Alright guys, Math 3, we're going to do some more equations of circles. This time we're going to have circles that, it says not in standard form, but really they are in standard form, and they're not in center vertex, or center radius form. So we did something at the beginning of class to remind us how to complete the square, and we need to remind ourselves of that. So here's a quick little review. How do you complete the square? Okay, if I wanted to complete this square, if I ended up with this binomial, I'll complete this square by taking half of that number and then squaring it. So again, that's something we did a couple months ago, but we do need that skill again today. So quick review, completing the square. Alright, here we're going to have to determine the center and radius. There's really two guidelines that we can talk about here. One is we want to get all of our variables together in groups, so all the x's together, all the y's together, and we're going to do that on the left. And then any of the constants that we have, we're going to move to the right. So as you can see, I tried to group some of these together. The two x's need to go together. The two y's in green, they need to go together. And then this constant in blue actually needs to go over to the right hand side. So that's what we're going to start to do. So I group the two x's together, and I left myself a space here because we're going to do just what we did up here. We're going to complete the square, so I left myself a space. Same thing with the y's. Leave myself a space. And then remember, we're going to move the constant to the right. So how do you move the constant to the right? Well, you have to add 12. Alright. Now, remember, we are going to complete the square, so just like we did up here, we're going to complete the square right here. And I complete that square. Negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. Negative 4 squared is 16. And then I have to complete the square over here. And that gives me 36. 12 divided by 2 is 6. 6 squared is 36. Now, we have a fundamental issue, though. If I add 16 to the left of an equation, I must add it to the right. And if I add 36 to the left of the equation, I must add it to the right. So don't forget, we always must add on both sides of the equation. Okay, if I go ahead and put all this together right here, that ends up giving me 64. And then remember, the whole point of completing the square was to write this as a binomial. So how do I write this expression in red as a binomial? Well, I write that as x minus 4 to the second power. And how do I write this whole green expression as a binomial? That's going to be y plus 6 to the second power. And this is the center radius form. So now it's easy for me to tell that the center is at 4, negative 6, and the radius is at 8. So we were able to take something that was crazy in standard form, put it into center radius form, easily determine the center and the radius. Okay? We're not going to do the other example on the page. Instead, we're going to do two problems. Do two problems from your homework. So here are two problems from your homework. Here's we're going to skip 1 through 6 and start with number 7. So again, I'm kind of identifying the parts that need to go together. The y's and the x's need to go together, and the constant 405 is going to need to go to the other side. So put the x's first, and I leave space to complete the square. I put the y's next, and I leave space to complete the square. And then I'm going to move this constant 405 over to the other side. So I do that by subtracting, so it's going to be minus 405. Here I showed my work to complete the square. That's a 225. Again, 28 divided by 2, and then you square it, ends up giving you 196. And notice I immediately add those to both sides of the equation. So if I do it here, I have to do it here also. Simplify the right, ends up being 16, and then when you simplify the left in the perfect square format, it gives you these two binomials, which easily tell me the center and the radius. Alright, take your time, run through that as often as you need to. I got one more problem that we did from our homework, and that's going to be number 14. The only thing that's really different about number 14 is I have this 20 is on the wrong side, isn't it? Doesn't it need to be over here? So I'm going to need to subtract that 20x and then put them together. Okay. Now I can complete the square here, so I can take half of that negative 20 and square it. And make sure you do it to both sides. Right here, I'm going to take half of the negative 12 and square it. And make sure you do that on both sides. And when you put that into binomial form, perfect square form, you can easily tell the center and the radius. Guys, your homework tonight is you don't have to do 1 through 6. You start with 7, and you're going to do 7 through the end, but you only need to do the odd problems. We'll see you tomorrow.